All right, thanks a lot, John. What a nice introduction. And I am a member of Maine Farmland Trust, and often when I get the letters from John, I do give a little extra because I really believe in what the Maine Farmland Trust is doing. Not only that, I live in an old farmhouse with a barn. I have a little bit of land, and I'm so pleased that in the last couple of years, I've had some young farmers farming that land. I don't charge them anything. It's just very rewarding to me to see the land being farmed. It's a great feeling. So it's my pleasure to be able to work with you here today. Here's what we're going to do between now and 4:30. First of all, we're going to remind ourselves of some of the things that we've learned throughout the day, and then we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to ask you, what's the problem? We might think of it as challenges. What are the challenges? But really, from where each of you sit, what do you see as the major issue? What's the problem? What's the solution? And what are you going to do about it? That conversation is coming. But first, let's remind ourselves of what we learned. Look at this. These are the workshop sessions that we had today. These were the morning sessions. These were the afternoon sessions. There was also lunch and topic networking. Now, in case you haven't figured this out, this is not a session where I am telling you what we learned. This is a session where I am asking you. So let's start asking right now. Beginning with the workshops that just happened because they are fresh in your memory. And we don't have to start with this one. If you were in any one of these workshops, I would like to hear from you something you learned that you think is worth sharing, that you'd like to share with everyone else. The first time you talk, I'd like you to tell us your name and your affiliation. Who wants to tell us a lesson learned from one of these workshops? Anyone?
I'll start.
Start us off, Chris.
I'm Chris Coffin with American Farmland Trust, and I was in on the coordinating and collaborating on land access efforts. And there were two things. One, I was so impressed with the breadth of service providers who were in the room. And two, an aside conversation, I was talking about the Beginning Farmers Resource Network, and the comment was made, that's a high-functioning network. And we smiled and said, oh, that's great, right? We like high-functioning networks. So I just thought that was a very useful thing to learn.
Nice. The Beginning Farmers Resource Network. Let's stay on number 5. Others of you that were in that session with Chris coordinating and collaborating on land access efforts, what else did we learn from that session? Someone else? I'm impressing you. How about another session? One of you were in one of these other sessions, 1 through 4. What was it like? Imagine that I'm asking you, what did you learn in that workshop? I'm asking you, what did you learn in that workshop? Don't be bashful.
I'll answer.
Oh, thank you.
I was in
Tell
number
us your name.
with Charlotte Young. We have Shalom Orchard Organic Farm and Winery up near Ellsworth. And we're in the early stages of the process of transferring the farm. What I learned was that we need to have a plan. We need to get it down on paper. We need to figure out who we need to contact and what steps we need to take.
That's great. Now, which one were you talking about?
Number 2.
Number 2.
Without an identified successor.
Right. And did you learn some things in there about the plan, the type of plan, where you could go for resources? You did. Okay. If anybody else was in that session, go ahead.
That was one of the things I wanted to just kind of bring out. I think maybe at the end of this, but I'll do it now, is that I need help with knowing how to get our information out to prospective farmers.
Okay.
And what websites there are, what places to go with that.
Nice. Okay, that's good. Thanks for speaking up. Anyone else in session 2 about this planning on transfers? Anyone want to contribute to that? Any other of these sessions that you just came from this afternoon? What were some ahas, some new things that you learned? We're going to go over here to my old friend Joe.
I was in number 4, creating successful lease agreements. think the biggest thing, sometimes I get caught up in the details. What does the lease need to say? What is, you think like you'll never get all the details, but the big thing I got was the relationship, that if you have a strong relationship with either the landowner or the farmer, that you're never going to get it right, completely right. There's always going to be problems, so that better relationship you have, the easier you're going to work through things.
Now, when you talk about this relationship, Joe, you tell us you're with a land trust, is that right?
Yeah, York Land Trust. I do the stewardship and land management.
Right, so here he is speaking as a land trust, saying how important it is to have the relationship with both the farmer and the owner. Anyone else in that session, number 4, want to contribute to tell us what you learned in that session? Was there more to it? Any of the other sessions on the right-hand side, these are the ones that we did this afternoon. I'm going way over here. Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Cassie. I'm actually was in, not really, session 4, and I was just, something that was made aware to me is how important numbers and facts are when you're trying to borrow money.
Numbers and facts. I'm going to come around to this side, Cassie. I want to hear a little more about that. What numbers and facts are most important? Anything come to mind?
How much money you already have.
Yeah, okay, good. That's excellent. Anyone else want to add to that? Okay, we're jumping around. This is just fine. We're sharing with each other what comes top of mind for the afternoon workshops. Other lessons learned that you think somebody else should know about. These are the things that you wish everybody could have heard. You had the chance to be in that workshop, but tell everybody what you learned.
Hi, Jim Baranski from Sherlin Orchard. I was in workshop 1, putting together a deal that works. And what they emphasized is that it's a good idea to get everybody involved from the beginning, all of the family members that have a stake in it, the landowner and the farmer, prospective farmer possibly, and also a lawyer and whoever is going to be doing your financing, and possibly an accountant.
Okay, that's the team, I guess, and getting the stakeholders and the professionals all involved early on in the process. Anyone else in that workshop have something to add? I'm still on the right-hand side of the wall here looking for lessons learned from the afternoon workshops. Anyone else?
My name's Beth Valentine, I'm an attorney. What I learned in this session that many of you may already be aware of, but there's an agricultural mediation service that helps resolve conflicts among family and among all these partners to the deal. And that seems like a valuable service that I wasn't aware of before today.
If somebody wanted to learn more about that, the agricultural mediation service, is there somebody that can give us a website or a phone number, or we just...
Maine.gov.
At Maine.gov, we can search for it there, agricultural mediation service. Okay, thank you. Anything else from the afternoon workshops? We're going to turn to the morning workshops in just a second. Any others? Oh, Stephanie.
Just a quick thing, we were having a moment in group 5 reflecting on Vermont envy. And Rick Kurzbergen with Cooperative Extension said, though Maine has lost fewer dairy farms than Vermont. So I thought...
I was there for that moment, yes. Back at you, Vermont. Okay. Let's turn to the morning. This was a long time ago. We've learned a lot since then. But reminding you of the morning sessions on the left-hand side of the screen there, would anyone like to share with us something that you learned that you think is worth sharing with the group? There we go.
So Frank, it was in the morning session before the session. Is that okay?
That's fine. Let's hear it.
Okay, so one of the things that I learned that was really important was about, oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the farm. Oh, Mr. Rector, Farmer Rector, are you? Windswept Farm, yes. It was the complementary documents between forming an LLC holding company for their small holding homestead And the whole website, Farmstead Cooperative, is just an incredible resource, so innovative and yet not, such a learning curve, so helpful.
Yeah, wasn't that Dickey Hill Farm? Is that the name?
Junior farmers are, their farm, Dickey Hill Farm.
Okay.
The senior farmers are Windsor.
That's right. Okay, thanks for clarifying that, yeah. Other lessons learned from these workshops? Katrina?
I work for a land trust, so it's mostly about easements so far for us. And the whole concept from Vermont is the option to purchase ag value, which to go on top of your easement. It just adds another complicated layer. And what I don't like about easements is how complicated they are, but it does seem like an interesting tool to protect accessibility, and that's what we're all about.
Can you or anybody tell us just a little more about that? What does it mean to purchase ag value?
So a farm, I'm the last one to talk about this because I just learned it. You want to do it?
Sure. So the option to purchase at ag value, known as OPAV, is an additional layer on an easement that actually gives a land trust or municipality the option to step in and purchase the easement, purchase the property, excuse me, it's late in the afternoon. To purchase the property if when it goes on the market, it is not at a price that is its agricultural value. The intent of this is to keep lands more, protected farmland more affordable. By what you're doing up front in buying the option is you are buying all of the rights down to its agricultural value. And so therefore, it's a little bit more money typically to landowners up front, and a little less money on the backside when they sell it because it can only be sold at agricultural value. But that value can fluctuate and can appreciate if agriculture appreciates.
You could buy it secondarily, right? I mean, you might have done the easement at one time and you could go back and buy the option.
Okay, it's really helpful to learn some of these tools. Yes, sir?
This would be from Farm Transfer Planning 101 this morning. And what I learned was that you shouldn't let taxes overwhelm the transference plan. That there's all the other parts of the plan deal with humans, emotions, and attachments to things that are very important. So don't let taxes get in the way. They're important.
That's good advice for all kinds of things, probably. Any others from the morning? Did you have a hand up? Oh, you were pointing over here. Okay. I'll get there. Thanks for waiting for the microphone. It really helps people get to hear it.
Hi, I'm Lori Clark with the York Land Trust, and we're in the land business, and we don't want to be in the building business, and something that stopped us in looking at helping with farmland is not wanting to own the farm buildings. So to hear about ground leasing, where we can own the land, but the farmer can own the building, that's just opens up a whole new world to us.
Nice. I'm loving hearing these stories about new worlds opening up, people becoming aware of new tools. That's what this is all about. Any other lessons learned from the morning workshops that you think are worth sharing with your colleagues here? How about over lunch? Right? There were 3 mini networking topics, and of course there were lots and lots of just informal lunchtime conversations. Did anybody hear a good story at lunch? Or make a good connection that you'd like to tell others about? Anyone? There probably were some. You just want to keep them to yourself. I'm going to go over to this gentleman, Stephanie. We haven't heard from him yet.
Hi, my name is Jonah, and I was approached by 2 landowners who are interested in potentially working with new American farmers in the Lewiston area. So that's very exciting, a group of farmers that formed a cooperative and have been looking for land. And it was helped connected by Erica over there. So it was great to be able to have that in-person connection and talk about it together.
Nice. Thanks for mentioning that. We'll go hear from Stephanie. Yes, ma'am.
So I sat with Michael. He's just across from me. He's raising his hand up. He traveled here from Minnesota for this conference. He works with veterans and helps them find access to farms. So we had that common interest, and maybe he'll add a little more about himself and his work.
Nice. If you want to speak, well, yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, Michael, but if you'd like to tell us, we want to hear.
Well, I'm a high school graduate in 1960, so my high school classmates are getting their second knee and they can't get back in the tractor to sell their farms. And a lot of them are veterans, and they're saying, we could do something about getting young veterans in farming. And, you know, they've got good-sized farms in Minnesota, and they say, well, you know, if somebody wants 5 or 10 acres, that's really not a problem. So it's, I'm getting pushed at this from the old veterans, and the young veterans that are coming through are pretty interesting. They want to do food farming, and half of them are women. And half of the new farmers coming in are combat vets. And they want to heal the land, and they want the land to heal them. So it's very gratifying. And it's a lot of fun to see all these kids, and just to see their values and see how energetic they are. And we've already got four deals in the ground, so it's just very gratifying. So the challenge that I think I have, and maybe all you have, is that the whole thing of transitions is just so fragmented, it's just so complicated, that you know, part of what we need to do is defragment this thing and make it simpler and actually make the whole course of things for the outgoing farmers a lot easier, a lot more satisfying. In Minnesota, about 14% of the farmers have a transition plan. So there's a lot of community loss that's done with somebody that doesn't have a will and a plan. So just in terms of benefiting the community, we can do a lot better job. It's just really pretty amazing. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm rather grateful to see all the people here.
Thanks for sharing that. That's great to hear. I was in a lunchtime conversation, and I heard a young farmer say, we need to demystify this and make it more efficient. We even talked about a flow chart diagram. If I'm a landowner, if these conditions, then this, if this, then this, if this, if I'm seeking land, this, then this. It might be a very complicated chart, but we've heard a couple calls for somehow making this simpler for both the farmers that want to transfer land, owners, and farmers that are seeking land. Let me move along here. Our time is limited, and I want to leave plenty of time for our discussion about solutions as a group. But first, I want to remind you of some of the things that we learned in the opening session, the opening plenary. Let me see if I can switch. Yeah, can you hear me okay? You can still hear me through this mic, right? Okay. It was called Roots in the Land. It was the opening panel up here. And I have put on the screen here just some nuggets, if you will. Not everything we heard, of course, and I'm not going to say it as well as our panelists did, but a few things. There is a huge need out there. This is what John began the conference by telling us. We need incoming farmers to sustain current growth and fulfill the promise of farming in Maine. In the next few years, as many as 400,000 acres of Maine land could be in transition, and we had someone to thank for that, Russell, who first figured this out and brought that to the board of directors of the Maine Farmland Trust many, many years ago. Similarly, across the country, over 70% of U.S. farmland is expected to change hands over the next couple of decades. Traditional methods of farm transfers are not adequate to meet those needs, and we heard this quote at the bottom: food security requires farmer security, and farmer security requires land security. It's very simple, and that's the crux of why we're here. And it's not just about ownership, it's about tenancy. I hadn't fully understood that before this morning, but there are many ways in which a farmer can have a long-term and viable relationship with the land that they're farming. It doesn't have to be ownership, and we are learning new and innovative ways for long-term tenancy. Oh yeah, and this, farm realtors need to know about the soils, not just the granite countertops. No farms, no food. It's not farmland without farmers, right? These are the bumper stickers. Maine has about 1.4 million acres in farms, about 45,000, my typo, 45,000 acres are protected, and the amount of farmland is growing. That's all positive. about senior farmers. Remember the survey data that was brought to us? Let's remind ourselves what we learned. For one thing, there's a lot of senior farmers. The average age of farmers in Maine is 57. 90% of senior farmers don't have a young operator working alongside with them, young defined as somebody 45 or under. Almost universally, all senior farmers want to see their land remain in farming, but many don't know how that will happen. And they think, no one is going to work on my farm as hard as I have. But Erica and Allison think, the young farmers at Dickey Hill Farm work very hard. We've heard some different opinions on that, right? These are some of the main concerns of senior farmers according to the research. They want 4 things. They want income when they retire. They want time to focus on back burner projects. You know, those passionate, this is the way I heard it, that those passionate things that they would love to do, but just never have time for because they're always, you know, working the land or milking the cows. Time to focus on back burner projects. They want to keep the business going to protect people from getting hurt. There are people whose livelihoods depend on those businesses, and they want the businesses to keep going in spite of their withdrawal from the business, and they want to keep the farm farming. Those are the 4 primary interests that senior farmers have. Some other things that the recent survey findings suggest: there needs to be services to help exiting farmers explore their options. Agricultural conservation easements increasingly becoming a useful tool. Reach landowners who may not be current landlords, that's key. And interfamily transfers are challenging too. You know, there may be a sense that only those outside of families need help, and that's simply found not to be the case. Oh yeah, farmsteadcooperative.org, right? This was the story from Eric and Allison. Came to Maine, to homestead, and developed a 10-year plan. So actually I've learned that this is a bit of a typo. The farm that Eric and Allison had was called Windswept Farm, and the name of the new operation of the younger farm is Dickey Hill Farm. But they put together and are implementing a 10-year plan to transfer ownership to young farmers. They're doing it with an LLC that has a fractional ownership, and by my understanding, the fractions are changing over time to be a slow transition. I'm going to invite, after I'm done with this slideshow, for any corrections or additions, clarifications. I want to make sure I'm saying these things correctly. The arrangement lets the new owners farm and build equity, and lets the old owners see the fruits of their labor, literally. Oh yeah, and the emotional factor too. We learned about that and we saw it. Brady Hatch is leasing farmland like all over Maine. I mean, didn't she? I couldn't quite tell, but she had quite a few spots. Each piece of farmland has a really, really long history. There's some other little Brady nuggets here. Not everyone knows what an acre looks like. Farmers are not always ready to stop farming. These are some lessons learned from a young farmer who's tried to lease the land from others. The best way to find out about available farmland is word of mouth. But she said, despite the challenges, there is no doubt that Maine is a great place to farm. At the end, Erica asked the 4 panelists to imagine a farm future where blank. Here's the 4 things that they said. Farmers, landowners, and community mutually benefit from farmers having secure tenure on land and producing farm products for the region. Ditto. That's a pretty good sentence. Retiring farmers plan ahead. Aspiring farmers can learn how to plan ahead. That's my summary from the morning panel discussion. Any clarifications? Did I get it right? If I didn't, I'm not offended at all. The most important thing is that we get it right. Anybody have anything to add or clarify from that? That's about right? Wow, okay. All right, good enough. So I'm going to write these in some notes for you. I'm also going to prepare some notes of some of the things you said, lessons learned from the earlier sessions. Let's do one more thing with our remaining 20-25 minutes. We know that there's a need. Now, I'm not saying this perfectly correctly, but I've been sitting here all day, and it seems to me that the need is food security and economic security, healthy food and good jobs for Maine people. The need is clear. And the opportunity is that huge amounts of farmland will be transferring ownership, and there is increasing popularity for local food production. I mean, we know that these things are, there's a huge need, there's a huge opportunity, so what's the problem? What is, if we could fix one thing, what should we fix? This is my question for you. You've been sitting here all day like I have, and I would like to know what is your assessment of the nub of the issue, the crux of the problem. If we could wave a magic wand and fix one thing, what should we do?
I'm Joe Barrett, I'm with Land for Good. If I could wave a magic wand, I would close the gap between inflated land values and the amount of money a farmer can make on that land.
So the problem is the gap between the land value and the ability to make money farming off of the land. Nicely stated. That's one person's view of the problem. What's another?
Any business can write off all the expenses of materials and labor and everything that goes into their production, but farmers can't write off anything for their land except mortgage they're paying to somebody else. And, what is their labor worth?
Okay. So that's something that contributes to the problem that was stated, the disconnect, the mismatch between the land value and the ability to make money. And one issue with that is the write-offs. Okay. Others, would you agree that this is the nub of the problem, or did you hear other dimensions of the problem today? If you could fix one thing about this entangled, complex situation, what is most in the way? Money? Tell me a little more. What kind of money? Whose money? How much money? What do you mean when you say money?
I think it goes along with what Joe just said, and that is, the value of these farms is in many cases way beyond the means of a young, aspiring farmer. And how do we fix that?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
I didn't say it before. My name is Rachel Lynn, and I'm with the Resilience Hub. I also have a homestead bed and breakfast in Gray. I think the biggest problem for me that I faced all day was the annual finance cycles of having to turn a profit every year means that we have to depend on agricultural systems that are extractive from the land, annual crops, tillage, where we need a more diverse crop profile for the state. And I look at the difference on that graph this morning from Land for Good, where the aging farmers, 45 to 65, and the younger farmers, the blue and red. If you looked at that the way I did, you saw that the younger farmers are valuing diversity, and they're looking at all kinds of different profitable vectors for profit, whereas the senior farmers are focusing on crops that are longer mainstays in our economy, like hay and maple syrup and things like that. But the profit cycles that investors need and banks need to see on paper, I can't plant a walnut grove and get hundreds of thousands of dollars in 50 years on that as a farmer. And I think that's a problem.
Right. Well said, I get it. Disconnect between the farming cycles and the financing cycles that investors are demanding. Other elements of the problem, what's in the way?
Just more money issues like being able to afford health care, college tuition, retirement funds, being able to not just pay for your land, but be able to put money away that you'll have for whatever you need it for.
And these problems are not just among farmers. There are many, many people facing issues with affordable health care, college tuition, etc. Others? Yes, sir.
Well, we've been hearing a lot about wealth inequality in our society. I think we have land inequality in our society, and I think we need to do more to address the land acquisition that's happened over decades and hundreds of years, and really look at how we can restore land more to low-income and moderate in America, and also restore land to native populations who've had their territories taken away from them, and also look at reparations as well, and the promise that was made to restore land to freed African-American slaves. So I think we need to really look at how we can implement land redistribution in our society and look at other models that have happened in other countries to give land access to all people as a human right, and really look at the access to land as one of our basic human rights.
So, thanks for saying that.
That's a big magic wand.
Okay, that's a big magic wand. Well, some of these others are pretty big too. I want to ask you more about that. We're in the problem. As you know, the next thing is the solution. But I'd like to ask about solutions here a little bit. You said models from other countries. Can you tell us about one? And if you can't, that's okay. But you put your hand up later when we talk about solutions, because I would like to hear if you think that part of the problem is land inequality and it requires land distribution. Then I'm challenging you and all of us to really think about how that might happen. Same with any of these other problems. I'm going to ask you for solutions in a moment. But other dimensions of the problem. Yes, sir.
Imported food. The next door neighbor had an orchard, he had to give it up, he couldn't compete with Chinese apples. 90% of our garlic comes from China. Okay, how do you compete with slave labor?
And can you just tell us your name, sir?
Bruce Shearer.
Thank you. Other aspects of the problem, what are we up against here?
Paul Dillon, attorney, estate planning attorney. One of the biggest problems I see from my side is not having enough competent, trained, professional attorneys, accountants, financial lenders, financial advisors who understand farming for the uniqueness that it has, as opposed to just your everyday businesses.
Very good. Any others? We'll go back to Joe, and then I'm going to give you a little summary here.
It's Joe from York Land Trust. I think one thing I saw today is there's a lot of, we had a lot of different solutions, maybe not perfect, no silver bullets, and it's really difficult trying to find that piece to match that landowner with the farmer, and just having that, like we were talking just before, the technical expertise to really make sure you're doing the right thing. You want to do the right thing. It might feel good, but it's pretty confusing what's the right thing.
Yeah. All right, I've heard 5 dimensions of this problem. One is the difference between land value. I'm going to call it, the problem is the challenge that farmers have making money. Because of that it's so dependent on land value is high, the inability to write things off, etc. I'm going to put in the summary notes for you the challenge of making money in farming. The annual finance cycles that investors require is a second thing. Land inequality is a third thing. Imported food is a fourth thing. And a fifth thing is technical expertise to help landowners with transfer of farmland and getting people connected to that expertise. Not everything you said falls nicely into one of those 5 things, but the way I've heard it, those are 5 dimensions of the problem. What's the solution? To any one of these problems, I'm asking you, what is the solution? Is it a public policy answer? Is it an economic answer? Is it a start a new business answer? What are some solutions?
Well, just one, because obviously there's numerous ways to approach this problem, but I will
this won't surprise anyone when they hear it. I think land protection is clearly part of the answer. It is one way to reduce that gap between the value of land on the open market and what farmers can afford. So to your question, Craig, what does that mean? There's a public policy component in there. We need more federal and state funding for that purpose. That's a critical part of it. But I think Maine has shown that a lot of work can be done by NGOs. We've got a great land trust network in the state. We're doing a lot of great work. We just need to keep it up. It's only part of the answer. We can't protect all of the land that's in this situation, but if we could protect another 50, 75, 100,000 acres in the next few years, that's going to make a huge difference.
Thanks for starting us off. Other ideas about the solution? What can we do about imported food? What can we do about land inequality? What can we do about the financial mismatch?
My name is Michael Cox. I think part of the problem is education with people on food in general. The one thing we talked about was imported food, and that people don't spend, or as Americans, we spend the least money of our income on food, by and large, across the board. So people are always looking for the cheapest, quickest answer to feeding themselves, whether it's McDonald's or cheap garlic from wherever. I think education in what we're eating and where it's coming from, and just the appreciation for good food across the board is the key, because we all understand what good food is, because we produce food, we enjoy good food, and we try to give our families good food. But the general public, by and large, has no idea where it comes from, or appreciates what good garlic is, or what a good head of lettuce is, or what the nutritional value of that head of lettuce is.
So if there was more demand for good food, locally farmed food, that would help with that economic viability challenge that farmers face. That's what I'm presuming. Other solutions? What needs to be done to fix these problems? The opportunity is huge. The need is great. We just got to crack this nut.
Obviously, one of our very real problems is GMO crops. Okay, and I'm not so sure that's a problem. The solution to that, obviously, is labeling, so that people don't buy it if they see it's GMO. And then organic, they're going to come back, very strong, and obviously that's local economy.
Okay, so again, it's a consumer awareness solution, which would drive demand for local healthy produce. That's what I'm thinking. Others?
You see, there was a number of match kind of sites, not like a dating site, but for the farmer to the landowner. And so that was good to see, like Vermont Land Trust and all that was part of their daily work on their website.
Okay, match sites, or I'm going to even broaden that to say mechanisms to match, those who want to farm with those who have available land. And I'm even going to take the liberty of broadening that even more, and access to expertise. It's not just enough for two people to get matched up. This is complicated stuff. Somebody's got to be able to help them and walk them through. I've heard that pretty loud and clear today.
Allison, going one step beyond access to expertise was something that was mentioned in the afternoon sessions that I heard was access to mentors. So it's more than just expertise, it's a personal connection with somebody who's been there and done that.
Let's go over to Peter. It's so much fun. I got so many old friends in the room here. This is great. Here.
Part of the solution, maybe bringing an awareness of food insecurity at the scale, and maybe putting a dent in some of that. Last Wednesday night at Colby, they brought in Will Allen from Growing Power as a speaker, and I think building support for viable models to locally grow and distribute nutritious food to those who need it most. I don't think we have an awareness a sufficient awareness in the 4 out of 5 people in the country who aren't really acting on or understanding or engaging in aspects of food insecurity, and the 1 in 5 who are impacted by it for the entirety of their lives, the cost of which is, if enough people understood that, we'd see that as a problem that was worth addressing, and we'd learn how to distribute and at what scale and various models. And I think that what we're doing today is beginning to bring awareness to ways of addressing that.
So let me just understand, you're saying that you're talking about, I'm going to be blunt here, but feeding poor people with local produce from local farms. And if we did that, again, that would drive more demand for local farming and would help this economic issue. I think that's what you're saying, right? And
well, I think finding models of that really work, and it was intriguing to hear national presenter Will Allen, who is doing some of this with his company Growing Power, where the scale of his operation across the country is beginning to make a dent in providing nutritious food at a cost and locally that gives people who most need it food. And by creating those kind of models, and his example was it's not going to be done by nonprofits, although, John, yes, that is a part and parcel of it. It's going to be done by entrepreneurs. And I think when you recognize what the problem is, and this man has done it for 30 years, address this in a way that was startling to see what he was doing and what the impact that he was having, particularly in urban cities that many of us would be frightened to live in.
yes, sir.
I think it's also important to get the word out about some of the solutions that we already have. You talked about the Beginning Farmer Resource Network that Erica works hard on, and a lot of other people in the room too. And more than once in the different sessions that I had been in this morning, somebody said, "Oh, I wish there was this." And 3 people said, "Well, there is." But people just don't know where to find it.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding us of that. Did you want to say something, Chris? The battery's run out on this Mac. She's gonna, yeah, maybe that's a good one. Tell you what, I got a backup mic here. Well, I'd rather that you use the mic if you don't mind. Here.
Ooh, I'm not accustomed. A little weird. So I just wanted to follow up on what that gentleman over there said, is that if we collectively, state government, federal government, and even privately redirected some of our healthcare dollars into the food system to promote healthy foods, we would have better health outcomes.
Use healthcare dollars. Okay, now I gotta put myself back together. Okay, use healthcare dollars into the food system. All right. Last call for solutions. Anything else on your mind? Something that you heard today that you want to share with others? Or maybe a new idea that you just had to fix this problem and capitalize on this opportunity that we have?
Talking about collective ownership, or this is just an idea that just came while sitting here, is that the old 60s commune, if there's a way that these collective people could own the land, run it as individual capitalists, then maybe they could use what resources the group have to buy a bigger tract of land. But if some MBA would work out a business model, then that might be a solution for using a larger tract of land.
Nice. Okay. All right, this has been great. Thanks for sharing with me your thoughts about the problem and the solution. I got one more question for you before we adjourn today, and that is, what are you going to do about it? This is the call to action. This is the reminder that all talk and no action is just talk. This is a little setup for me to tell you the story of the 3 frogs. 3 frogs were sitting on a lily pad, and one of them decided to jump off. How many frogs were left sitting on the lily pad? Well, as far as we know, 3, because the frog only decided to jump off. And you can be sitting here, deciding stuff. It's not the same as doing stuff. And it's only when you take action and jump off the lily pad that you make ripples and you change the system. So I'm asking you to think quietly to yourself for a moment. Based on the things that I have learned at this conference, what is just one thing that I'm going to do to help address this problem? We're thinking about this. Is anyone willing to share what you're going to do? You heard a call for mentorship. This is how it works. Somebody explains to somebody else what they do or what they're going to do, and it inspires others. Thanks for starting us off.
It's actually not what I'm going to do, it's what I'm doing. I'm working with a group of young people to transition my farm into a collectively owned farm.
Here's an example right here. Can you just tell us your name and how something look like?
Yeah, Christopher Hahn, 3-level farm, South China, Maine.
They're going to talk. That's a fine example. That's what I'm looking for. Somebody else want to share with us what you're doing or what you intend to do?
Well, this is in relation to what he just shared. I'm working with farmers who want to start cooperatives to support them in developing their structures so they can cooperate together in a farm business.
Someone else? Okay, it works really well if somebody raises their hand on that side and then on that side and then on that side.
Well, I don't mind at all, it's kind of fun.
We've heard a lot today about agriculture, land trust. I haven't heard many people talking about permaculture. Okay, it's very difficult to make a living with a small-scale small-scale agricultural situation. But permaculture involves a lot of things where money can be made much more easily. Okay, alternative energy sources, alternative housing kinds of realities, and so on. If we put agriculture together, which is central already to the permacultural reality, I think we'd be more successful in drawing people and making money.
We have time for this one and then maybe one more.
Become a real estate agent and study the soil map, not soil the study map.
We got it. Become a real estate agent and study the soil map. Yeah, can you just tell us who you are?
My name is Christina Gastello.
Thank you. One more? Somebody willing to tell us what you're going to do about it? Or what you are doing?
I've already said a lot, I don't know.
If you're doing something, we want to hear it.
I'm going to continue to teach permaculture.
Oh, Stephanie wants to say something?
Our state soil scientist at the Maine Department of Agriculture is Dave Roke. He's 63 years young and strong, and he is willing to go out with anyone who is looking at land with his auger and proof or test the soil survey. So an hour of his time could save you all kinds of struggles with making your land produce what you want.
And what's his name?
Dave Roke.
Dave
Maine
Roke.
I'll
Okay.
put it in your notes, Craig.
All right, I will put that in the notes, and maybe that's something that you're going to do, is call Dave and get your soil tested. Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up. It is exactly 4:30. It's been my pleasure working with you, John. I'm going to call you forward if you'd like to say any last words, or am I going to close this thing out? we're going to close it out. It is my wish for you that you are successful in doing the things that you intend to do. Thanks so much for giving up your day and coming today. Thanks a lot. It's been really great. Give yourselves a round of applause.